tell you about my labour and delivery with my son Caden, who was born in December. So this happened 6 months ago, so he's now 6 months old, obviously. And so let's get on with the story then. So I went into labour on the 25th of December, so Christmas Day, at around 5:30, actually just when my mum was about to give out dinner. I got the first worst pain I've ever felt in my life. So I knew that I was in labour because, you know, it was near the day. He was due on the 29th, but I went into labour on the 25th. So everyone's told me that, you know, your first baby, it's a long labour that you usually have to go through. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. I was in labour from the 25th and he was finally born on the 28th. Now let's get into what actually happened. So I went into labour. It was quite slow then Christmas night. Nothing really kicked off until Boxing Day, where I decided to go to the Boxing Day sales with my uncle, where I was experiencing extreme pain when I was walking around the shopping centre, because when you walk it's meant to pull the baby downwards, which is then meant to progress the labour. So, you know, I probably shouldn't have walked as far as I did, but we decided we was going to anyway. So when we got back, it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Boxing Day. My mum decided that we was gonna go to the delivery suite to go and get me checked out. Once I got there, I was having contractions about every 20 minutes, I'd say. And the lady examined me and told me that I was 1 centimetre dilated, if I remember correctly, or I was 1.5. I was something like that, but my cervix neck was still quite far back. So I wasn't in established labour. She told me to go home, and if anything changed or the contractions came quicker, to come back. So the next day, the day after Boxing Day, which is the 27th, I was in excruciating pain by this point. I'd been in labour now for 2 days. I hadn't slept since Christmas Eve. So I was very tired as well. So that would continue for that day. They come a bit quicker, and now there was about 15 minutes apart. So I wasn't going to go to the hospital on this day because I knew that the day after I had a checkup appointment anyway, that I was going to go to the midwife even if I wasn't in labour, as my due date was on the 29th. So I waited that night. I didn't sleep again that night. When I woke up in the morning, by this point the pains were coming every 10 minutes and they was really, really bad, to the point where I could barely walk. So once I got to the hospital, the midwife examined me and I was 3 centimetres dilated. And I was very emotional because I didn't want to have spent another day in labour without anything happening, because it was so painful. I hadn't slept and I was just an emotional mess, basically. That comes with pregnancy even if you're not in labour. So she told me that they was going to break my waters because they thought it was the best thing, and to be quite honest, what followed, I'm kind of glad she did. So I went down to the delivery suite area and I met my midwife. Her name was Constance, and they proceeded to walk me through what was going to happen. So they put me on some gas and they broke my waters. They use like a metal hook thing, so they slide it into your cervix and slightly pull, and it breaks the membrane bag, which then releases the fluids, which then means the baby's head can fully hit your cervix. Which means if it can fully hit your cervix, it should open the cervix more. So she did that, and once they broke your waters, I don't know if any of you know, I mean I'm sure you do, but once they break your waters, you only have 24 hours for the baby to be born before they need to be born by emergency C-section. So what they did after they broke my waters, they put me on the monitor, so it monitors the baby's heartbeat and the rate of the contractions. So after about an hour of this happening, I wasn't really progressing that much. I was still only 3 centimetres dilated. So they told me to get up and walk around the delivery suite hallways and go for a walk. I did that for about half an hour. I come back and I had dilated 1 centimetre, so I was now 4 centimetres dilated. So I was in established labour. The problem is about 10 minutes after being in established labour, I had 2 contractions, but then after that my contractions just stopped. And then they start experiencing difficulty with getting the baby's heartbeat. Once they had decided they was going to put a clip on the baby's head, which means that they insert their fingers into my cervix. Sorry, this is a bit TMI, but they insert their fingers into my cervix with a little clip, which then is placed on the baby's skull to then give the baby a more accurate heartbeat. So once they did that, they realised that the baby was having prolonged decels, which means that the baby's heart is meant to be about 160 to 170 beats per minute, but Caden's heartbeat had dropped to 90 beats per minute. So they didn't really tell me any of this, I guess, so I didn't worry that much. So they called for an emergency epidural. So the lady come and gave me my epidural, which worked fine the first time. I then was visited by a doctor who told me that my baby was having prolonged decels and I needed to be going in for an emergency C-section within the next half an hour. So I got really emotional because I'm really scared of anything to do with surgery or anything like that, but obviously I complied. My mum got into scrubs. My boyfriend come and give me a kiss, and then waited in the waiting room where my uncle and his mum was waiting to hear the news of the baby. And then my mum got into scrubs, they got us ready and prepped me and took me into the theatre room. Now, even if you have an epidural and you are partially numb, for an epidural you have to be numb from your chest downwards, okay? It can't just be from your belly, it has to be above your breasts and to your feet. So they gave me another epidural. This wasn't working. I then continued to have 17 more epidurals which didn't work. I don't know if any of you have had epidurals, but epidurals make you shake like you're in a freezing cold country, like you have like a bikini on and you're in like Alaska. It makes you shake so badly. So I'm shaking. My mum's been holding me up for 2 hours so they can try and get the epidural in. I'm petrified of needles, so every time they was telling me what they was doing, I was passing out. And then on the last epidural that they were going to give me anyway, they lost Caden's heartbeat completely. His heartbeat slipped off the monitor and my blood pressure was up very high. So they decided the best thing to do was to put me asleep and deliver Caden, which I wasn't really happy with, but I did go along with because it was the best thing for Caden. The problem was I'd eaten before I went for a cesarean because I didn't know that I was going to have a cesarean. So as I was putting me to sleep, out of all the frighten, I guess, I did throw up. So the lady had to put her arm on my windpipe to block me from breathing and put an oxygen mask over my face as they gave me the general anaesthetic to put me to sleep, which was terrible. I'm telling you, it's terrible. So once they put me to sleep, Caden was born at 10 to 12 on the 28th of December, which is quite cool because my mum's birthday is on the 29th, so if he was 10 minutes born later, he would have been born on my mum's birthday. So when he was born, he had some trouble breathing. They did have to resuscitate him, but within an hour of him being born, he was breathing by himself, but he was in the neonatal ward. So they brought me back around, or I woke up at about 10 to 5, I think it was, so it's a significant amount of time later. My mum was next to my bed and so was my boyfriend. I couldn't feel my legs at all, so the epidural had started working when it wasn't meant to really. So my midwife come over and told me that the baby was fine. My mum had took some pictures which I will insert in the beginning of the video so you can see what he looked like when he was very first born. And they told me that I'd have to wait until I was completely unnumb, because if I got up now I wouldn't be able to walk, which I wasn't very happy with, to say the least. So I went into a bit of an emotional breakdown. So the lady did give me a shot of morphine in my leg to just help me go back to sleep. I wasn't creating any problems or anything, but I was quite upset that I couldn't go and hold my baby, you know, understandably. I wanted to go and hold him. So I then was woke up again at about 7:30, I want to say, and my boyfriend helped me into the wheelchair and I was allowed to go down and see my baby. Unfortunately, the first time I did hold Caden, I was quite drugged up on a lot of drugs. Morphine, you know, that general anaesthetic hadn't wore off properly. I'd had some codeine before I got into the wheelchair, so I was quite fuzzy. But I do remember getting him out of the incubator, and he was just the most beautifulest little thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think until you hold your baby you can actually understand what love is, because as soon as I held him, I had felt a feeling that I had never felt before. So he had to stay there that night, you know, just so they could keep up on him and make sure that his breathing was fine. He also had an infection, so they needed to give him antibiotics for an IV drip, which is like a drip that goes into your arm that feeds antibiotics through it. So I had to go back upstairs. So I went upstairs for a matter of an hour. I waited for the doctors to come round. They took my catheter out, which is like where you wee from when you're having an operation on your belly. They took that out for me. The doctor examined my stomach and told me, you know, the follow-up care and everything he needed to tell me. And that was it. I went back downstairs. I stayed there all day. At about 1 o'clock, my mum came back up to the hospital with my uncle Darren, who had been there the whole time and had been there throughout my whole, you know, labour before I actually went into labour. He was there. He took me to the hospital and all stuff like that. So they both come in and held Caden. And then we went and got something to eat. I then came back, and then 2 days later he was allowed up to the ward with me, where we stayed an additional 1 night, and then they released us the next day and he came home, and he is now a very happy 6-month-old baby. So, you know, my labour wasn't that easy, but I do have negative blood, which means that the antibodies do attack my blood cells and the baby when they're inside of me. So they do say that you're either going to have a really bad pregnancy or a really bad labour. And to be quite honest, my pregnancy really wasn't that bad. So we was expecting something to happen, I guess. But yeah, that was my labour and delivery story. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe down below. This was my first video that I've ever posted, so sorry if I did seem quite anxious, because I was, and I may have stumbled on some of my words, but I am quite nervous. So thank you for watching, and I'd like to see you again soon. Bye.